On today's episode, Tammy Hill joins me and Liz to talk about common barriers that lead to frustration in the bedroom, from lack of desire and feeling rejection to viewing marriage and sex as a stewardship and responsibility. Tammy shares helpful tips to overcoming a frustrating and stale sex life. Tammy Hill recently retired from teaching at Brigham Young University, but as a licensed marriage and family therapist, she continues to help couples learn to find pleasure and create a stronger emotional and sexual connection in their relationship. Tammy enjoys conducting making love retreats, honeymoon workshops, and dating boot camps, and has published a children's book, God Made Boys and Girls, and her book for couples called Replenish, Creating Sexual Fulfillment in Marriage. Most importantly, she's forever grateful to be a wife, mother, and grandmother. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Stronger Marriage Connection podcast. I'm Dr. Dave here at Utah State University alongside Dr. Liz Hill, our licensed clinical psychologist. We are on a mission to bringing you the very best, the research, the resources, the tips and tools to help you create the marriage of your dreams. Okay, Liz, yes. Super excited about our guest today as we welcome Tammy Hill. She's a marriage and family therapist who specializes in helping couples improve their relationship closeness and their sexual intimacy. Tammy Hill, thanks for joining us here on the Stronger Marriage Connection podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, Dave and Liz. Thank you.
Bless you.
I'm so looking forward to our discussion, Tammy. Before we dive in, though, can you share a little bit about the why? Kind of the why you are on a mission to help couples, a little bit of background, you as a therapist, and really what is it that really pointed you toward helping couples with that sexual connection?
You know, I think I was born with an interest in sex. I'll be really honest. My mom sat down when I was 8 and talked to me about things. And I, from that moment on, was curious. And my dad's a medical doctor. I would look through any pictures or anything I could find in his office. I remember learning about David and Bathsheba in Sunday school when I was probably 12. And I thought, I can read in the Bible about this. And that was helpful. So I've just been interested all my life. And I believe, I guess I'll back up just a sec, is I've always been taught that probably one of the most significant things that we do on earth is to have children and to nurture and care for our children. But the opportunity to become a parent was always taught to me. And I've always felt has been a really huge part of my mission here on earth. And so when I can remember as that 8-year-old when my mother was teaching me about reproduction, and I asked her, well, how long does it take? And she said, well, 9 months. It takes 9 months for a baby to grow. And I said, no, not that part. How long does this part take? And my mom said, 5 to 10 minutes. And that blew my mind. As an 8-year-old, I thought there's something wrong, because if this is so significant, this needs to be more significant on the other end. And so, Dave, I don't know when it started. I think it's something that just kind of came with me when I arrived.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I believe that as I happen to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I believe that our theology sexually is absolutely beautiful. It is incredible. The freedom and the expansion that is possible when we really sit down and ponder what the principles are. And yet, unfortunately, I see in our congregations and often in our leadership a real immaturity and an discomfort in talking about sex, especially sexual pleasure, and in a way that it creates shame and fear and confusion for a lot of people. And I want to rectify that. I'm on a mission to let people who happen to believe my faith the way that I do, let them know that this is a really important part of your development, and relationally, it can bring you so much joy and replenishment. And that is why earlier this year, I published my book, Replenish. And I believe that sexuality really can be replenishing to marriage.
There it is, Tammy. I've got my copy right here. I just need it signed now. I just need a signed copy. So yeah, it's on my shelf. I refer to it regularly, and we'll get into it a little bit later. But I want to let you know that it's right here next to me.
Wow. Yeah, good. I'm glad.
I'd love to get my own copy. How did you come up with the title Replenished? I can't. That's brilliant. That's brilliant to capture that.
I love studying the gospel, and I spent hours for several weeks. I would study the creation, and I can remember one particular day that I realized that in the creation that the plant material were commanded to multiply, the animals were commanded to multiply, but Adam and Eve were commanded to multiply and replenish. And it was like a light bulb went off in my brain, and I thought, oh, it's different for humans than it is for any other species on this planet. And from that moment, I have just felt like I got an answer to a lot of questions I've had. Why don't we make this a bigger part of our conversation? And I don't know that people understand it that way, but I believe that's what the replenish means, is that yes, we multiply, we have children. That's definitely part of the sexual function that we enjoy, but that in our relationships, we can replenish one another in beautiful, connected marriages. This can become something that sustains and helps us go about the labors of family life, which are so often exhausting and draining. This should be a place where couples can come together and replenish their energy.
That it should be. Well, I love the title. You know, we're discussing sexual intimacy, which is such a difficult and frustrating topic, Tammy, for many of the couples I work with in private practice. Why does sex, do you think, continue to have to be one of the top problem areas for many of us, especially maybe even throughout the entire married life, until we get help from someone like you?
Wow, that's a loaded question, Liz. Well, everyone comes from a family of origin, and within that structure, foundation, we learn about sexuality, or we don't learn, and learn a lot by not learning about sexuality. And that, as therapists, that what we grow in, the soil we grow in, really helps establish the plant or the tree. And as you move and disrupt the soil and move into marriage to replant in new soil, your spouse has also been growing in this other soil that has a different flavor for sexuality than maybe yours did. And he or she's uprooting and coming. And then the two of you are together trying to figure out, what's our soil of creation going to look like? And for in my work at BYU, and for I think it's section number 2 in Replenish, if I remember correctly, it's all about understanding that you have a choice of what you are going to create together this way. And it doesn't have to be what you had as a child. It can be what you had as a child. But I have found in my practice that when couples can come to a same page on what they want this soil to look like, that's when the troubles seem to really dissipate, and they're able to make some good progress.
Yeah. Tammy, the topic of sex, as you just talked about, it can be frustrating. It can be stressful for many couples to talk about. Do you have tips you could share with both wives and husbands separately when it comes to improving their sexual relationship? Are there some basics, some things, that many couples that you see, some common factors that you talk about?
So let me make sure. Are you asking how do they communicate about how they do it, or what can they do to do it? I think that they need to talk about it.
A little bit of both, because I think it's kind of a taboo topic that many couples, they just don't talk about, and they just expect it to kind of happen like on the movies. But then, are there some tips for to kind of get the discussion going? And are there some common, maybe some roadblocks that you see in your therapy with couples? So maybe two separate questions there.
Okay. So tips to communicate. First of all, it's often best not to communicate about sex in the bedroom. It's better, I think, a lot of times to, because you're vulnerable. I mean, you're there, you're trying to help one another, give and receive pleasure. And a lot of times what you might say can come across as critical, and it creates defensiveness. And then you pull apart, and it's not really blessing the marriage in that moment. And so I have found, and I often encourage couples to go on a walk, because even making eye contact sometimes for a lot of couples when they're talking about sex can be very uncomfortable. And so I often encourage people to go on a walk together, and it's one person's turn to talk and it's the other person's turn to listen. And you're listening to understand one another. You're not listening to correct. You're just listening to understand. And so I encourage people to go on a walk. That's a tip I use. Also, I think there's so many good resources that couples can get together and read together, or just do something instead of just suffering for so long. I had just last week in my practice, I had a couple come in. They've been married 34 years. And this sweet couple, she doesn't believe she's ever experienced an orgasm. And he just doesn't know what he should do. And I think that's a long time to suffer.
Gosh, yes.
34 years, they've raised 6 children, I believe, and they're all adults. They have grandchildren now. And I think, wow, you don't need to suffer in silence. Do something. Do something. Get a book. Reach out to Dave or Liz. Reach out to me if you want, and do something. Be proactive in this part of your life. It's not something that should just be skimmed over. And everything else is great. My husband's so kind, or my wife's the best cook, or whatever. No, there's so many. This is an important part of marriage. This is an important part of marriage that you shouldn't just gloss over. Roadblocks. I think one of the big roadblocks I see right now, and I suspect that you also see this, is that there's sometimes not a lot of trust in a relationship. And when there is not trust in a relationship, it's very hard for sexual intimacy to flourish. It's wise not to open yourself up sexually, especially for women. Sexual conservatism is wise, but to open up yourself in this physical, sexual way with someone that you don't trust just isn't smart. And so I think the roadblocks often come in. I'm seeing more and more people financially not trusting each other. They've had the financial infidelity piece. And so they're not trusting that way. So they don't want to open up this way. And also porn plays a big role. If one spouse is viewing porn and the other is not comfortable with that, that leads to a lot of distrust as well.
Mm. Yeah. I could see that.
Me too. Other things I hear often in my practice, for instance, Tammy and Dave, would be about lack of desire. I'm just not in the mood, whether because they're so busy or stressed out with work, kids, or maybe even just bored in the bedroom. What advice do you have for listeners who feel stuck, or that things are stale, or they just don't feel like having sex with their partner?
Yeah, this is so amazing you're asking this question, because last month I heard that, I think probably 40 times with people that I was meeting with. And I'm on Instagram, and I put it out to my Instagram public, and the response was incredible. So I held a free webinar in November and collected nearly 1,300 emails putting that out. And from that, I have another webinar going on tomorrow, December 5th in the evening, that's free. And now I have nearly 7,000 emails gathered of people wanting to learn how can we do, because we're tired, we're tapped out, we're touched out, all of that. They're wanting to learn. And so I'm starting a club. I'm calling it, I was going to call it the Too Tired Tonight Club, but in thinking about it, I've decided to call it TLC, Touch, Love, Connect Club. And I'm going to be doing that starting in January, once a month, having a a meeting and doing resources for people to help them this way. I think it's a huge need that you're bringing up. And too tired tonight. I understand. I have a large family. I remember when I had young children and teenagers. And so you're up in the middle of the night with the youngsters and you're waiting up all night for the older ones to get home. And I get that. What I like to answer to that is sexual touch should not make you more tired. Sexual touch should give you replenishment. Sexual touch needs to be something that you're gaining some type of energy, positive energy from. It shouldn't draw energy from you. And so couples need to learn how to make love in ways that they are actually rejuvenating and replenishing each other rather than feeling like they're, that one partner is taking energy away from the other.
So sexual touch should rejuvenate a bit.
I do. I think it needs to. And sex, most of the ways you make love has nothing to do with penis and vagina intercourse. There's a lot of ways to make love that don't include intercourse whatsoever. And that's not what people think. They think making love is one thing. And there are a lot of ways that you can make love with one another that you can create within your own relationship that are really fulfilling for both of you. And so I guess my answer to all of you, and will be something I'm processing with this new TLC club I'm doing, is how can we make your touch replenishing rather than draining so that you're not too tired tonight?
Beautiful. So it's touch. What was the L? Love?
Connect? Touch, love, connect.
Connect. Okay. Love it. Are you a proponent, Tammy, of couples scheduling sexual intimacy on their calendars just like they would any other meeting?
Yes. I think I've always kind of thought there's three kinds of ways to make love. There's spontaneous sex, which all of us think that's how it's always going to be. You just have that sexual tension. You've got the space and time and you just have sex. How often does that happen once you have children? Very rarely, right? And then you have scheduled sex, which is the sex that you like put down on the calendar. And then I call it maintenance sex, which is just getting together in ways that often the low desire partner is stepping up a little more and the high desire partner is relaxing a little more, and they're kind of getting to some equal footing that way. But my husband, Jeff, and I, both of our first spouses passed away, and we remarried each other 17 years ago. And between the two of us, we have 12 children. And I can tell you, honestly, we have had through the years to schedule sex. And so we had a calendar when we had all the kids at home. We'd put all their schedules, lessons, sports, everything, along with our careers, and put things down on this calendar. And we would look on the calendar to find maybe a 2-hour window that we thought maybe that we could be alone at home. And we had a little code HS that stood for hot sex. And we put that on the calendar. And we did that for a long time. And then one evening I was preparing dinner and our two youngest sons were looking at the calendar, and one of them said, "Well, what's HS?" And I just remember freezing, like, oh no, how am I going to explain this? And then the older brother said, "Oh, it's something at the high school." And so
that's cute. I love that. That's perfect.
But yeah, I think you schedule important things. I scheduled my calendar today to be able to visit with you guys, and sex should be an important part of your marriage.
So for those couples who say, "Oh, I don't want to do that because that loses the spontaneity," what do you say back to them, please?
I say, well, at least, schedule one time a week that you're getting together.
Great.
But there's a lot of room in there for spontaneous sex on top of that, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in. Tammy, one of the questions that I actually just recently received this question, but it's not the first time, and you've probably received it, Liz. You have experience, so I'm interested actually both of your responses to this, and it's from a male perspective. So a guy reaches out and says, it's frustrating. I don't know if I've ever had a more painful experience as rejection, of being vulnerable, of making this bid. And maybe one night she's not in the mood. Okay, that's fine. The next night, but then it's like weeks and I'm busy and I'm doing stuff. The feeling rejected is very painful, if not one of the most painful experiences. And if connection is the opposite, rejection, feeling rejected, what do you, any advice from either of you, both of you, on from both perspectives? Does that make sense? From the man and the woman, or both partners kind of experience as far as feeling rejected, and what can couples do about that?
Do you want to go first, Liz, or do you want me?
Go ahead, Tammy. I'll follow up.
Okay. Rejection is painful. Rejection is so painful, especially from this person that you love and that you've committed your life to. And so I like to look at marriage, especially marriages that are committed, covenant marriages, that you are promising each other when you get married that all of your sexual energy, your romantic feelings, your flirty energy, all of that is going to go, you're promising it's going to go to this one person for the rest of your life together. And the spouse is promising you the same thing. And within this little space, there is big responsibility to show up. We must show up for each other. If we're going to be able to replenish and rejuvenate, if we're going to mature and develop sexually and grow, we need to show up for each other in this space. There's responsibility with that. It's a stewardship. I believe there's a sexual stewardship. That's what I call it in marriage. And when I teach my students, if you think of something you're a steward over, what are some things that come to your mind, Dave? What are you a steward over?
Well, finances and family and, work responsibilities. Yeah. Those types of things.
Yeah, me. And I serve on the LMFT licensing board for the state of Utah. I mean, you have roles and stewardships in different places, and it's really important that you don't forget the sexual stewardship piece of your marriage. We all need to show up sexually for each other.
Yeah,
that's my thought.
That's powerful.
I like that. I think that in dating, I just remember the great rejection, right? Just the years of tears, if you will. We married late in life, my husband and I, Tammy, at age of 50. So you think it's the end. When you marry, you think it's the end of rejection. And what I'm constantly reminding myself and the couples I work with is the power that we have as people, as partners. We have the power to harm or to heal, and it lies within us. And I think, no other place are we more vulnerable than in sexual intimacy. We're exposed, literally, figuratively, in all ways, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And that's a powerful place. I love what you say. We have a responsibility of stewardship, because we do. I'm the only one that can do that for Ben, right? He's the only one that can do that for me. And I take that very seriously.
I do too. And I really think that this is teaching that young teenage children need to start understanding, that our young men and our young women need to know that this is something you show up for. This is something you do with each other and enjoy together. You learn to enjoy together. You work on this area of your marriage, just like you work on the finances, just like you work to take care of getting the yard ready for winter, just like you work together. This is an area of marriage that you have a responsibility to show up for.
Yeah, love that. I've got another question for you both. Okay, you ready for this one? So this is more of, time goes by and we get into these routines and these relationship ruts, and things start to feel stale, or you feel stuck. That's a question that I've often received through social media as well. Tips, Tammy, for those where it just feels like we feel like roommates now, and when we do have sex, it's just kind of the same thing, and it's about a 3 out of 10 type of experience. thoughts about kind of the novelty and changing things up.
Yeah. Well, definitely monogamous sex can become monotonous, right? And so it's really, and going back to sexual stewardship, like we just talked, there's a responsibility that both partners have. If this is getting 3 out of 10 time after time, both of you need to do something to make this better. And I love learning, and I think get a book and read something together and learn something new. That's probably the most, I think reading a book is the most cost effective way to really investing into your relationship. So I often will start there. A lot of people could get a lot of help just from a really great book. And on my website, I have a lot of book recommendations for sexuality. I know personally, I do making love retreats. I do this weekend. I'm doing my holiday couples retreat at the Grand America in Salt Lake, and it is so much fun. And do something, plan something. It doesn't need to be 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10 is so sad if that's what you're getting night after night or day, week after week. You don't. Again, I guess show up. I go back to this a lot. Show up for each other. This is an important part of your happiness.
Mm-hmm. Now, Tammy, you have, speaking of books, right? I mentioned your book earlier, the Replenish book, and you have a podcast called Live Your Why, and you have all kinds of great tips on social media. Tell us a bit about each of these, starting with your book. Why did you write it, and who is it targeting?
It's a book for primarily LDS couples. It's Replenish, Creating Sexual Fulfillment in Marriage. And took me 7 years to write because of busy lives and because, oh my gosh, it's so vulnerable when you talk about sexuality because you're talking from your experience. And so it was vulnerable for me to do that as well. Why did I write it? Because I think there's great books out there that have good information. They don't have practical information. I can read go into Deseret Book and read all kinds of books on the foundation of the spiritual nature and the importance of the emotional connection and all that. And no one's telling me what to do. And so I don't know a lot of people that do what I do. I do research. I write. I teach. I'm a therapist. I'm an educator, certified sex educator. And so I like to teach people how to have sex. I like them to get an idea of what to do. You learn to make love by doing it. Right?
Yes.
Sex is experiential. You can read about it all you want, but until you're actually really doing it, you're not really learning. And so to me, Replenish is unique because it includes a lot of the principles around sexuality, the good research around sexuality, and also some really practical things to start working on and doing together to understand how to give and receive pleasure. So I feel like it was a needed book. That's probably
so needed, Tammy. I mean, you just really hit this. There's really nothing out there, as you mentioned, and vulnerability, the research, but I love the practical, the tips that you open up, and you don't pull any punches in this book, which has been needed for decades, right? For so long.
I know. So that's what I do with Instagram. I started my Instagram account just a little bit, I think before COVID. It was in 2020. And I realized while I was teaching at BYU, I retired from BYU earlier this year, but I realized the way to connect with this generation is not going to be through a book. It's going to be through social media. And so that's why I didn't start a social media account. I should have 10 years ago when I started teaching at BYU. My son kept saying, you need to get on. I said, I don't really like social media. I don't want to do that. Boy, I wish I would have listened to him.
Yeah. It's time to stop the resistance, isn't it, Tammy? You and me both. I get it. And you've done it. You've accomplished that. Good for you.
It's not been easy. And however, it's so rewarding to be able to, like this TLC community. I never would have known any of these people had I not been on, like Instagram. And so this population needs social media that they can interact with. That's how they're going to learn. And there's so much, excuse the language, there's so much crap on social media that's not helpful. I'm committed to putting helpful, practical, research-based information out, hopefully in creative ways that people can connect with. So that's what I did that. I do
What
have
about your podcast?
oh yeah, that was it. My podcast, I really believe that, bottom line, the only person that we can really have any control over is ourselves. That we can only change ourselves. You can get in a marriage and point fingers and wish your spouse would do this, or wish you'd be happier if they did that. But that's not the truth. The truth is you can only do you. And I think if you really understand your core values and you are living your life aligned with those values, you're going to be happy, even if you're in a marriage that isn't the best or where you want it to be yet. You can find so much joy when you're standing strong in who you believe you want to be or who you want to be. And this year, where I'm in season 4, and this year I've kind of needed to take it, according to marketing, I need to narrow down my niche, however you say it. And I've kind of spread myself thin with the single population and with the married population. And now I'm just kind of zeroing in on the married population. And so this season 4 is more about living your why sexually in marriage. And so we're focusing, all my guests have been about, I talked for today, I just released the episode with Dr. Alexandra Solomon, who has a new book on pleasure. And it's all about, is it okay to embrace pleasure? Why is it so hard for mothers, especially, to think that they're not worthy of pleasure some way, or that it's not a good thing to want to have? And so it's all about sex and marriage now, and it's my favorite thing to talk about. So it's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I do it.
You're so very generous with your podcast and your Instagram. Thank you, Tammy, for just really being able to be out there. You're a gatherer. You're a gatherer of great, accurate information and a gatherer of people. I love that about you.
I appreciate you saying that.
I appreciate all you're doing. And I loved your interview with Dan Purcell. I have not heard about Tantric Sex for a long time, to tell you the truth. I don't know why. I know it's still very, very much alive and well and encouraged. Do you mind just giving us the quick version for couples that are listening about Tantric Sex and maybe how to bring it into their own sexual connection?
You bet. Tantric Sex, I'm not talking about neo-tantric sex, which is the kind of the crazy orgy type of sex that is popular in different cultures. That's not the Tantric Sex I'm referring to. I'm talking about ancient Buddhist practice, Hindu practice, with sexuality. And I'll just describe how I learned about it. First of all, I had back surgery about 9 years ago. I was in chronic pain for a long, long time and needed surgery. And so making love was becoming increasingly painful for me. And I thought I need to figure something else out. And so I started doing a ton of research on chronic pain and sex, and came across a woman that I adore. Her name is Diana Richardson, and she's written so many beautiful books on tantric sex. And my husband Jeff and I went to Switzerland and met her and did a class with her, and then I've taught a class with her since then. And I just adore her. She has such a beautiful holistic view of sexuality. And basically, she's basically teaching the Eastern world's version on sexuality, which is tantric sex. And I grew up in this Western world that is orgasm focused, male centric, unfortunately, male researched only, really, until about a good 20 years ago. And so it's not been the best kind of sex for women. And that's what I thought sex always was. And it wasn't that I wasn't having fulfilling and great sex. I thought I was. But when I started reading and learning all of this about the Eastern world sex, I can tell you it was honestly like, I describe it like in my house that I've lived in for my entire life. And I know every square inch of it. And one day I'm cleaning and I see a door that I've never noticed before. And I open that door and I have an entire new wing to my house. That's how it felt to me learning about Eastern tantric sexuality. It is not orgasm focused. It's focused on deep connection, genital connection, but the genitals aren't working against each other. They're relaxing into each other, and there is still energy. There's pulls. They pull each other. I have my magnets right here because I always talk about this. They put like the pulls on the magnet. That as you continue to practice tantric sex, it's like this is the vagina, this is the cervix, excuse me. This is the cervix, this is the penis. The cervix actually will start pulling as you go slow and keep those genitals together without thrusting. It starts pulling the penis up into the cervix and into the uterus. And oh my heck, it is incredible. It's a beautiful way to make love that we have never learned about here in the Western world. And so in a lot of my retreats that I do, I teach at least one lesson on introduction to tantric sex. A lot of people think it's boring because a lot of times you don't feel like you're really doing anything. And of course, we have this mental checklist that this is what we do. This is what we do. We do this. And tantric sex is more being together and seeing what energy happens. And as you practice more and more, the more exciting and fulfilling it gets.
Well, for anyone who wants to know more, I would suggest they go to you. You're a very safe person to talk about tantric sex. Like you said, there's a lot of crap out there, right? A lot of misinformation, things that are not helpful. So where can listeners find you and learn more about you, Tammy Hill, and your resources, please?
I host the Live Your Why podcast. It's on all platforms. I am on the internet. My website is tammyhill.com. Tammy _ LMFT. No, Tammy _ Hill _ LMFT on Instagram. My book Replenish. I have a children's book called God Made Girls and Boys, and I'm finishing a second children's book right now called Your Body and the Planet Happiness. So
nice.
That's how you can find me.
That's great, Tammy. And we'll put all those resources on our show notes as well. Tammy, as we wrap up, we like to ask our guests this question, and that is, what is the key to a stronger marriage connection? How would you answer that?
I think the key to a stronger marriage connection is you being a stronger you. If you invest in your health, if you invest in your happiness, and if you are living a way that is aligned with what you believe is most important and that you're passionate about, you're bringing such great energy into your marriage. There's no way your marriage can't be better. So that's the key to
healthy. Yeah, you often say that, Dave, right? Healthy me leads to a healthy we. And Tammy, you were mentioning you and Jeff had different answers. I know we'll meet him another time, but do you mind just sharing his? I'd love to compare the two. What did Jeff say was the key?
I have to remember. I can't remember. Let me see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll make our listeners wait because we're going to have Tammy and Jeff back on. We'll talk again. So we're going to hold them in suspense, Tammy. But before we let you go, we call it a takeaway of the day here on Stronger Marriage Connection. Is there a take-home message that you hope our listeners will remember from our discussion today?
Oh, for sure. I hope that you will take home the idea that you're created with the capacity to have amazing sexual pleasure. And in your marriage relationship, I hope that you would want to claim the blessing of that and really push yourself to learn more about you, learn more about your spouse, and replenish one another in a beautiful way that you were created to do. That's what I would hope.
Love it. Love it. Thanks, Tammy. Liz, what about you? What's your takeaway?
Monogamous does not have to mean monotonous. I've never heard those. They're so similar, aren't they? Those two words. And I think the belief is right there for a lot of couples who have been married many years. And so I think we're only limited by our lack of education. So I often tell couples, you're only going to be as young and beautiful as you are right now. let's keep learning. Let's find out how to have a deeper connection, especially in this beautiful area of sexual intimacy. Dave, your takeaway?
I love the discussion about the scheduling, and it may sound boring, but I think that putting that as a priority is important. One of the favorite things that we love to do, my wife and I love to do, are just getaways. Whether it's a night, 2 nights is better, and we'll just go somewhere, but it's planned and it's intentional. And even leading up, we talk about it. Even driving there, we talk about, and it's just it's something that we have always loved to do. But it takes planning and intentionality. Just a little getaway, especially with kids. It's worth the effort, whether you're in stages of little kids, getting babysitters, making a plan. But I love our getaways.
Yeah,
I love that. I think 2 nights, it needs to be a minimum of 2 nights, because the first night, just go eat a huge dinner and sleep and wake up the next day and just make love all day long. That's what I love.
Yes, I agree.
Nice. That's a great.
Tammy, can't thank you enough, my friend, for coming on and sharing so much wisdom. And we appreciate your time coming on today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with both of you.
All right, that's it for now, our friends. Thank you again for joining us here on another episode of Stronger Marriage Connection. We'll see you next time.
I'm glad you're in this world, Tammy and Dave both. And remember, it's the small changes that create a stronger marriage connection. See you soon. Bye-bye now.
We'll see you. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a few minutes to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. When you hit the like button and leave a comment, your feedback helps us improve the show. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and connect with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and on Facebook at Stronger Marriage. Be sure to share with us what topics you want us to explore or what you loved about today's episode. If you want even more resources to improve your relationship connection, visit our website at strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producers Rex Polanis and Alexis Alcott and the team at Utah State University. And you, our audience, you make this show possible.